I'm Dr. Randal Langley. Welcome to the Pinnacle Leaders Podcast, where we share life-impacting content centered on lordship, leadership, and lifestyle. Our goal is to serve leaders like you and help you maximize your potential and reach the pinnacle of your calling. Please like, subscribe, and share this channel so we can serve others too. Now, let's enjoy today's show. Well, hi friends. Welcome back to the Pinnacle Leaders Podcast. I'm here again with my wife, Laurie Langley, and we want to talk to you today about the subject of emotional prosperity. You know, when we talk about life in general and we talk about growing or aging, both of us now have entered our 60s. I know that's hard to believe, but this truth is applicable. I don't care if you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s. It really doesn't matter. We understand that tomorrow will be another day, and we are, in that sense, aging. But when the subject of aging comes up, a lot of times we talk about aging well physically, right? Taking care of ourselves. Of course, that's a passion of mine, and yes, you and I have tried to build and develop healthy habits of exercise and proper sleep and all the things that go into having a healthy physical element to our life. But the physical side is not all that there is, right? There's benefit to taking care of yourself physically, but you can be well on the outside and unhealthy on the inside. Right. And that's what we're seeing a lot of times. The subject of emotional health is a big deal in today's culture. Very big deal. Right? And so there's the physical component, there's the relational component, there's the financial component. We have all these things. But one of the biggest parts that impacts our lives is our emotional health, the mental component. Exactly. Right? And so here's one of the things that we know. Aging well is not done by accident. Right, it's intentional. Right. So if you're going to take care of your health, if you're going to age well, there's an intentionality to it. In fact, almost everything that goes well is a result not by accident. Life tends to drift downhill. You never drift into your best self. Right. Right? There's an intentionality to almost... You should
say that again. You never drift into your best self.
Correct. There's an intentionality. There's always a commitment to develop a healthy habit, to move forward toward something, right? Yeah. You can't just expect to drift, you drift downstream. You don't drift upstream. And no one is immune from putting the work in. Right. Nobody gets a pass. Right. We all do it the same way, right? So care for our mental and emotional health is something that we all have to do. Yes. And so that's what we want to emphasize today. And so we're going to give you this little podcast today that we got. We heard this from Paul Scanlon, and it really impacted our lives. We listened to it several times. We took our own notes. Yes. And you hear things and then you process it through your own life. And so that's what we wanted to do. We want to share today with you 6 principles to emotional health or emotional prosperity. 6 principles for emotional prosperity. And you've taken a significant dive into this area for yourself. Let's just start off by saying, let's define to our best ability, what is emotional health?
Emotional health, emotional prosperity is taking stock of it and learning and growing and understanding what emotional health looks like. Okay. I think it doesn't do anybody any good, like you said, to have so much success in other areas of life, but to be sick on the inside, to be unhealthy on the inside. Even in 3 John 2, it says, "Beloved, I wish that you prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers."
Your soul prospers, right? So that's funny because beloved, I wish that you would prosper, and that has to do probably with financial aspects and
be in
health.
Yeah, physically,
as your soul prospers. So there's that connection. Yes. In that people often don't. The thing is, when you are financially bankrupt, there's zero money in your account, right? You know that. Right. It's right there. Yeah. So there's a physical awareness of it. If you are, if you cut your finger and your finger needs healing, okay, it's there. You see it. Yes. But it's oftentimes the indicators of lack of wellness,
emotional wellness,
emotional wellness, the unhealthiness that's on the inside,
we blow right past.
We go right past. We don't see the indicators,
right.
And it's not as easy to define, but it's just as real as any of the other things. In fact, maybe in some ways more real, because if we're not healthy on the inside,
it affects everything.
It affects everything.
Exactly.
Right?
And for me, I think the impetus of turning 60 last week, and so
it's amazing because you look 30.
Thank you, dear. The weeks and months that preceded turning 60, I did a lot of thinking about aging and aging well and emotional health. And so this podcast that I heard by Paul Scanlon really impacted me for that reason, because I think I was in that frame of mind to think about, what do I want to do more of in my 60s, do less of in my 60s? How can I age well in the next decade of my life? What would that look like for me as a person? So that was
those are questions that we all need to.
Exactly. And the other thing that impacted me so much as I was coming up to last week and turning 60 is that nobody ever taught me these things. So I feel like in sharing them with our Pinnacle Leaders Network and putting it on the podcast, it's going to help people potentially like me to think about things they've never thought about before, in ways we've never thought about it before, so that we're not so tempted just to blow past the indicators of our emotional health, that we're not well, we're not prospering in a certain area of our lives. We just have in the past, I have just tended to blow past it.
Now we're definitely not perfect. We're not the model.
No.
Right? Jesus is the model.
Yes.
We've got our stories. We've been through a lot of ups and downs, successes and failures, like we talked about in the last podcast. Right? But we're at a season in our lives where we're in such a, I want to say, a good place, a fun place even. And here we are, and honestly, I feel like I have more to give. I feel like I have more experience, more education, more wisdom, more grace, more seasoning, more maturity, more things to pour into the lives of people. And I'm looking to accelerate what we do and how we love people and serve people and function in this world. I'm not looking to back off.
Right. And the good news is we decide.
So
we decide if we back off or if we put the pedal down.
Right. So we said we're at the front end of our 60s.
Yes.
Right. Now I went in there ahead of you, so I'm a couple years ahead of you.
2 years ahead of me.
Right. But some people, when they reach our stage of the game, they're not mentally prepared to go forward. In fact, they're thinking about letting off and just drifting into oblivion, or just,
which is not going to be healthy.
Which is not healthy at all. And here we are, and thinking about what more can we do? How can we ramp up? Right. And some of that is connected to, doing what we can to steward our physical health. Right. And some of it is connected. A lot of it's connected to our spiritual health. Right. But so much is connected right here to what we're talking about today. Emotional health.
So let's dive in. The first principle to emotional prosperity, again, that Paul Scanlon shared was, emotions are data, they are not directives. Emotions are data. They are not directives. It's just incoming data. It's intelligence. It's the dashboard. Okay, it doesn't have to drive a decision. We don't have to engage with it.
We don't have to make decisions based on our emotions.
Right.
And that is what gets a lot of people in trouble.
Right. That's right. So I think that recognizing that this is data, because like I said, I was not taught that growing up. I was pretty much, my emotions ran me. And I didn't know any different. But now this is the opportunity to accept the truth that all emotions are optional. They're optional.
Wow.
That's
so powerful.
It was revelatory to me, okay? I'm not obligated, or it's not a command for me to be driven by my emotions.
Just because you feel an emotion doesn't mean you have to do anything with it.
Right. And I don't know how deep you want to get into this, but I'm just going to put this out there, and we can let it go. People can just listen to it and think about it if you want. But he says, Paul Scanlon says, that emotions become our mood, moods become our temperament, and temperaments become our personality. So it's not that emotions aren't important, they're very important.
Right.
But a lot of times we engage with them, or we don't engage with them, we just let them drive us, and emotion becomes a mood, let's just say a negative emotion even. So all right, I'm ticked off about something, and if I always let emotions drive me to that place, well, the mood becomes a temperament, and a temperament becomes a personality, and before I know it, I live basically in a life of being ticked off all the time, annoyed, and so
you get known for that.
And yeah, you're known for that. That person, they're sort of, or it could be the opposite. To become a cheerful, to known as a cheerful person or whatever. But the bottom line is that emotions are optional. Everything that comes to us is not a directive.
Right.
Okay, it's like if an emotion is thrown at you, it might be from social media or a phone call you get, or somebody in your home, like a close relationship that you have or whatever, throws an emotional ball at you. Okay, think about a ball coming at you. Our instinct is to catch the ball, right? But in this metaphor, we don't have to catch the ball. Dodge it, let it go on by, and just say, no, I'm not going to engage with that. And to me, that was, number one, very empowering, and number two, something I was never taught before.
Yeah. Emotions are data.
All right.
Right?
Yes, or data, however you want to say it.
Yeah. So all emotion is optional.
Yes.
Not obligatory, not a command.
Right.
And that's a pretty heavy statement right there. You get to decide what you do with it. It's not a directive that you have to respond to.
It was so revelatory.
I like what here's too. A prosperous soul is a solid foundation for a prosperous external life. So a prosperous internal life is the foundation for a prosperous
external life, which is why I think we want to share this on the Pinnacle Leaders Podcast. This is something that will enhance our lives if we'll engage with it and steward it well, apply it where it is applicable to different ones that will listen. The second principle.
So 6 principles to emotional prosperity.
Right.
Number 1, emotions are data.
Right, not directives.
They are not directives.
Number 2, emotions are not feelings. And again, how often have we, I want to say through my whole life, basically, up until recently, I didn't understand the difference, okay? And Paul helped me understand. Emotions are not feelings. An emotion becomes a feeling when I give it a meaning. Okay? So you say something to me and it makes me sad. Okay? It's an emotion that I'm sad by what you said because I've given it a meaning that establishes it as something sad in my life. So until emotion has a meaning, it cannot become a resident feeling. We need to recognize that that's the process that we do with something. An emotion comes at us, remembering that emotions are just data, but they become more than data. They become more than that when I give it a meaning. And a lot of times it may not even be the meaning that you
Right, so we've all had those things where we said, well,
Yes.
that's not what I meant.
Right.
But that's what you assigned a meaning.
Yes.
And now that has become an emotion.
Correct. So it becomes a feeling, an emotion becomes a feeling when I assign a meaning to it. I just feel like if people will think about that, they'll understand it. And a meaning is a far more powerful destiny. If we give something a false meaning, it will derail our destiny and cause us to separate from our destiny. We have to remember that.
Right.
He gave a positive example of Joseph in the Bible when his brothers did the things to him that he did. And remember, he ended up in the pit, and then he ended up Potiphar's house, and then the prison. Ultimately, he ended up in the palace. But Joseph was able to give a positive meaning to what had happened to him by saying to his brothers decades later, years later, I guess it was, you meant this for evil, but God meant it for good. Right. So you can flip it and do it in the positive as well. In other words, not letting the betrayal of his brothers, the hatred of his brothers, the actions of his brothers be the defining thing for what had happened to him, right? He gave it a positive, he was able eventually, I'm sure, to give it a positive definition and say, you meant it for evil, God meant it for good. So and rather than become a victim in his own head, he was able to give it a more life-giving meaning. Right. But I'm sure he was human just like us, and he had all kinds of emotions when that happened to him. But ultimately, he was able to let God redeem it.
Thanks for listening to the Pinnacle Leaders Podcast. Make sure to subscribe to this show on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast platform. If you have suggestions for our show, we'd love to know what you think. Visit www.randallangley.com for previous podcast episodes and other leadership resources. And also, you can connect with me through social media. We exist to serve leaders like you. Grace and peace, my friends.